5. Thursday night, rather cloudy with a shower or thunderstorm in spots. Low 66 to 70. From the Florida Weather Center, I'm Kevin Snyder.
WOCA. Ocala.
Listening to AM Ocala Live, WOCA, The Source, 96.3 FM, 1370 AM, broadcasting to you live from the Paddock Mall, streaming live, YouTube Live, WOCA, The Source Radio. Now, as we're about 5 minutes past the top of the 9 o'clock hour, it is time for On Top of the World, as we have Robert Colen in the studio with special guest Cammie Dennis as the Director of Fitness at OTO, or On Top of the World. Good morning.
Good morning. Be here. So glad to have Cammie back. She's been on the show with me a number of times, and it's always such a positive and exciting session that we do. And you know, there's so much to talk about, especially now. And I'm glad to have Cammie here to talk about like things we can do at home. Yeah. Now that we have the time, not to take away your thunder.
Absolutely, and at home, right? Yeah. Right. That's the thing. So, I think the idea was, and like you said, something more of a positive note is to kind of misdirect the conversation from everything that we already know and has been dwelled on with COVID-19. It's now to the idea of saying, hey, we've been at home quite a bit. Some of us have been eating a little bit more too, but at the same time, trying to do a little bit more to give ourselves some physical activity and with the necessity of kind of dealing with some of the stress that's been going on in society and the world in lieu of the pandemic. And that's what you're here to talk about.
Yeah, exactly. I think for, the nearly 30 years I've been in the fitness industry, the number one excuse I've always gotten about why people don't exercise is that they don't have time. Yeah. So for the first ever, I've been able to say, okay, guys, you know what? That excuse, we're going to push that to the side right now. Mm-hmm. So now is the time to kind of reprioritize some of those things.
Sure.
And exercise doesn't always have to be a formal prescription. It can be as easy as a walk and some stretching. Anything to get your body out of that static, sedentary position is going to help you. And I think what's really critical at this time is to realize that beyond the physical health of your body, exercise also helps with reducing stress and making you feel better.
Yes, that's a big one, is just kind of taking some of the pressure of the anxiety, of the stress, of a lot of things that's been like, because one day, that's just going through a day, you wake up and you're feeling like, all right, it's a new day, let's get some breakfast, let's roll with it. And then it starts to set in, well, I can't really go anywhere, I need to stay at home. And at the same time, you turn on the news just to check up updates, and then that starts to become oppressive. And then you wait for the 12 o'clock presidential news conference, and that becomes a little bit alarming. So then at the end of the day, you're like, I didn't do a whole lot, and I ain't better for it. So like you're saying is there's some activities that we can do just within our home.
Yeah, and I think that that's a great example, Adam. I think that we need to commit to kind of reforming our daily schedule. Our lifestyle has been so dramatically altered by this unprecedented situation that we need to set a schedule in place. And you say, you get up, you have some breakfast, the first thing you do is then move, because that's going to put your brain in a different place. So when you do see the news or read the paper, whatever it is, you're going to process that differently.
That's a good point. Yeah.
So, like I was saying earlier, exercise not only challenges your body, but it also affects your brain.
Yeah, and that's a huge part of it. And that's truly what we're here to stress a little bit, because this is one of those tumultuous times that, like we said, can get you more anxious about things and become a little oppressive, because some of that's contagious when it starts to feel like, not necessarily depression, but it's the idea of feeling like, this is the new normal for right now. We stressed a lot about how just off air, we were mentioning that maybe May will get the conversation rolling and getting back to some normalcy. But the problem is we don't have a specific date. We never really had from the beginning something like that, and that weighs heavy on the mind.
It's almost suffocating in a way, right? So
Yeah.
we're sitting around doing nothing.
Yeah.
And that's what's so great about having Cammie here. She can tell us what are some of the things that you're done with your breakfast, you had your coffee.
Yes.
What am I going to do now? What's
Exactly.
the first thing I want to jump on and say,
Yeah.
get out and do something? What do I want to do?
And really, I would encourage people to kind of tap into something that brings them enjoyment.
Yeah.
You don't want to just exercise to check something off a to-do list. It really should be something that you want to engage in. And I think that your talk about worry and anxiety are very true, and those are different things. Anxiety is a state of, you're being anxious about what's happening now. Worry is about what's going to happen in the future. And as human beings, we live in this vessel that is really designed to manage stress very well.
Right.
It is,
Yeah.
because of that fight or flight response. So at a primal level, your body encounters something that causes it stress, and it releases a surge of hormones. You're either going to fight that stress or you're going to flight from it. The problem now is we're not doing either. We're not really fighting it and we're not flighting it. So we just have this continual level of these hormones like cortisol and adrenaline, low levels of that, but after a while that undermines the state of our physical health and our mental health. So what exercise does is it uses those chemicals, it uses those hormones.
Good.
So we can actually change how we think and how we feel, in addition to getting all of that great exercise for our body, our heart and our lungs and our muscles.
Okay, so with that being said, what is some fun exercise, or what are some exercises that don't feel like oh man, I gotta exercise? What are some good things, or some advice on what we can do?
Well, I have a great place to direct people to.
Yeah.
And on top of the world, we have a lifelong learning center. It's called Master the Possibilities. And right now, we have 10 fitness videos that you can access for free.
Nice.
Right in the comfort of your own living room. So if you like that type of group fitness camaraderie, where you're being led through the exercise and there's music and there's kind of that energy component, I think you'll love that. You do have to log in, but it's completely free. You'd go to the Master the Possibilities website, which is masterthepossibilities.com, and you'd go to distance learning.
So .com or .org?
Oh, .org. I'm so
that's
sorry.
okay.
I'm so sorry. Forgive me. Thank goodness Robert's here. So, yeah, masterthepossibilities.org, and there's 10 fitness videos, very easy to follow, simple exercises with cardiovascular activity, strength training, and also stretching. So that's kind of a fun, energetic way to exercise. A lot of people are going outdoors now. I know in my neighborhood, I've seen more people walking dogs and babies in strollers than I've ever seen before. And there's really something to be said for engaging in what we call environmental wellness. When you go outside, that natural sunlight helps to rebalance those feel-good chemicals in your brain. So it suppresses that part of the brain that is stressing, that's anxious, and has worry. And it lifts up the chemicals that make you feel more positive and more in control, and kind of shifts your perspective a little bit.
And now, see, that's the difference in how Florida, I feel, with our weather, and I'm going to boast about this a little bit from being a northerner, that's the difference about us in this time dealing with COVID-19, is we have sunshine, and we have some warm weather, some 80 to 90 degree weather, and that is the difference that I've seen. I got friends up north in Northeast Ohio, and they've had a lot of different array of weather, and they see a lot of clouds, and that's a big part of it. But even if we were to have, like we're expecting this week, a forecasted where we have a lot of wet weather in the forecast and some cloudy weather to boot, it still is getting surrounded by something. It's being in the environment, you're saying, is even just kind of going for a walk when you get a break in the rain, or even if it's still cloudy out a little bit, it's still the idea that you're out there, you're doing something, and you're allowing your brain to process the surroundings, right?
Absolutely. 100%.
So, Cammie, what do you do if you have kids? I mean, you want to get them out of the house. They're sitting around playing video games all day, maybe. And
Yeah, my heart really goes out to parents. I have 4 children myself, and I remember when they were all younger and were at home together. So I've been thinking a lot about that. And I think for kids, the first thing you want to do is change the environment.
Yeah.
So even if it's getting them in the driveway, getting them in the backyard, getting them into a different room if it's, the weather is prohibitive.
That's a good point, yeah.
So change their environment, make it very play-based, whatever you do. It could be a sports activity. Kids are natural exercisers.
Yeah.
They love to exercise when it's fun.
Yeah.
But the minute they perceive that it's exercise, then they're going to lose interest. So keep them moving. So
Yeah.
that will use up some of those hormones that they have too. Kids are kind of a mirror of what you're feeling. And they
Sure.
might not be able to intellectualize that or verbalize that,
Sure.
but they're going to reflect what mom and dad are feeling too. So if they see mom and dad moving and active and smiling, then they will mirror that.
That's a great point. I have a 2.5-year-old, and that's nail on the head there.
Yeah.
And what I've noticed is, like you said, for children, it is kind of a natural thing. As soon as we do change the environment, it turns into a different game and their surroundings and stuff. And yet for adults, it's a little more difficult for us to do that. But like you said, as long as we're kind of still trying to do the same thing, change our surroundings, move a little bit more, even something simple as you said, stretching.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, what are some of the, you mentioned with the masterthepossibilities.org that you can go on to see some of these fitness videos and stuff. Is there anything else that you recommend in something more simplistic where some people who want to move around a little bit but maybe don't have as much mobility, do you recommend anything else?
Yeah, I mean, you always want to start where you're comfortable.
Okay.
So stretching is really important at a time like this because we tend to spend longer periods of time in static positions, and your body starts to adapt that.
Sure.
And so your muscles and your connective tissue shorten, and sometimes they actually adhere to one another. So just getting up and moving and stretching is going to help with that mobility. When you're more mobile, you feel better. So very simple, basic stretching. Think back to when we were kids and maybe in PE or those calisthenics,
there you go.
just stretching in a standing position or seated on the ground. There's lots of great opportunities online to find free resources right now. Lots of really good yoga videos on YouTube and things like that. We've got a stretching video at Master the Possibilities as well. So walking and stretching, great.
So, Cammie, one of the things, like even watching the videos, at some point you still want to have interaction with other people live. And I know you've been talking about doing live streaming.
Yes, so we're very excited to start some live streaming, hopefully next week. It's on schedule.
Yeah.
Again, through masterthepossibilities.org, we'll have some free live streaming videos, and that's in real time. So, of course, we'll be in front of a camera leading exercise classes, but we'll be thinking about all those people in their living room, and there's a little bit of that social element, knowing that we're all kind of doing that together at On Top of the World. We have this little saying that we've adopted, together but apart. So we're still staying together. We created a really fun activity for our residents. It's called Stride and Seek. So the very first week that we had to close down our fitness centers, every week we give them 3 destinations in the community, and they have to get to that destination and take a selfie of themselves and then send it in an email, and they get points for that, and then they're going to get a prize at the end.
Oh, yeah.
So it gets them outside, it gets them moving. They get extra points if they have a positive affirmation in their picture, if they're wearing an Oto shirt, things like that. Just to, like we were saying earlier, kind of put their brain in a different place and get them outside.
Absolutely.
And the brain part is so important that we were just talking about things like Brain HQ and Lumosity. I don't even know if they're still around, but what is it that it's not just physical activity that's important here, right? It's mental health as well, and brain health. So what are we doing with that?
No doubt about it. The science in brain health has really just exploded recently, and we're still learning, but we now know that we can grow brain cells our entire life, which is very exciting. We didn't know that.
Yeah.
And the connection between exercise and brain health is really powerful, really important, and that is the emerging program that we're working on right now. So in this little bit of a downtime, we're very busy behind the scenes. As soon as we reopen,
Yeah.
we're launching a new class called Brain Power, and it's a fitness class, but it is designed to provide brain health benefits.
Oh, wow.
And so we're learning now that if we use our brain, like Robert was saying, those lumosity drills or those brain HQ drills, if we do those types of drills that require thinking while we're moving, it reinforces those neural structures even more.
Oh, wow.
And so when you're thinking about doing, let's say you're doing a math problem in your head, you're using your frontal lobe. If you're moving, you're using the back of your brain, your cerebellum. So when you do both of those at once, it forces your brain to have to talk to each other quicker and more efficiently.
Yeah,
and
wow.
so we're providing exercises where you also have to think while you're doing the exercise.
Yeah,
so
that's incredible.
The combination, the connection, I should say, of brain and body is very exciting.
Yeah. So, like you said, even though in lieu of a lot of the stand down time, you guys have been working pretty good to find other avenues, and this is one of them, like you said.
Yes.
So you guys are definitely looking forward to coming out of this and implementing that, like you said. That's very interesting.
Yeah.
So real quick, just a taste, like what are some of the ideas behind some of the problem solving while exercising
Okay.
that you're going to have?
Okay, so we would teach a movement pattern.
Okay.
Let's say we teach you to take 3 steps to the side and then clap.
Okay.
3 steps to the other side and clap.
Yeah.
We teach you that pattern so that we reinforce what that motor skill is. Your body just learned that. 3 steps and clap. 3 steps and clap. Now we're going to give you a simple addition problem while you're stepping, and on the clap you have to say the answer.
Okay. Okay. So,
Let's say we have you march forward and then reach your arms up in the air, march back, reach your arms up in the air. While you march forward, I'm going to give you a category. Color. When the arms go up in the air, you have to give me the answer. You march back, a vegetable. March forward, a planet.
Yeah.
March back, a state.
Think about how
Things like
perfect that is even for kids. I mean,
Yeah.
kids,
Yeah.
you could be doing that all day
that's
long.
what I'm
Absolutely.
thinking too.
Yeah, and not to get sidetracked, but interestingly enough, I worked with kids for many years, and it's called action-based learning.
Yeah.
And that's how we taught kids. We would have them on a mat that had numbers and colors and north, south, east, and west.
Yeah.
And we would say, jump on 2, jump on 4, jump on the answer to 2 plus 4.
Yeah.
So they were moving and thinking. So that's been around for a while. We know it works with kids. Why not do it with adults?
Why not? Why not? And even her describing that, I'm trying to put my place in my shoes. Okay, doing the cha-cha slide, 3 steps to the left. And I'm like, oh man, and then throwing a math problem in there and a color. Like if you threw, like you said, move forward, put your hands in the air. Step back, put your hands in the air. What color's a carrot? Oh, shoot, orange.
Yeah,
like you're even
that's
right now just
exactly
thinking
right.
about
And
it.
do you increase the complexity of all that as you go along, or how do you work that?
That's right.
I
There
like
are
that.
progressions. So the more complex the movement is, the more energy it takes away from your frontal lobe.
Gotcha.
And so now your thinking, your processing speed slows down on the thinking. So the easier the movement is, the more you have energy for that frontal lobe, that executive functioning we
I
call it.
like that.
So
Two
it's
very
steps forward.
exciting.
Okay, now 2 steps back. Okay, 2 steps forward. 2 trains are moving at 100 miles an hour. If 2 trains at 100 miles an hour, 5 minutes intervals.
They're higher.
I can see the problem solving getting
You
even more
think about how
complicated.
great that is to take this, kind of vacant time,
Yeah.
and really basically turn your life around in a sense of saying, hey, I'm going to do something that's almost revolutionary for my mind and my body,
Yeah.
and really push forward. And when I come out of all this
Yeah.
chaos that we're in, I've improved myself a lot, and I'm on a new trajectory of my life.
Yeah.
And that's what Cammie's been doing for years and years for On Top of the World.
That's
But she's
awesome.
now saying, all of us can do that. We've got the time to do it.
Now, just to step back a little bit and look at everything in a whole, it's the difference between coming through some kind of crisis and then coming out the other side better for it, or always trying to find a silver lining or something positive, which is not always easy to do. But like you said, if you can come away with having dealt with what everybody in the world has dealt with. But remember, everybody's dealt with a different perspective of this pandemic. it's really saying something to see yourself say, hey, back in 2020, I remember we went through the whole months of lockdown and crisis. But hey, that's when your mom got started doing this and exercising differently, and that's how I taught you kids to do it, and here we are years later, better for it.
That's right.
I think that's important, and that's something to stress now that we're actually starting to get the conversations rolling about, like we said before the beginning of the show, getting back to some normalcy. That's where it's now starting to think about, like you said, trying to be just more positive and starting to do things that we can do more of in a positive way. And I think that's great. I think that's fantastic. Now, was that something you guys were thinking about long before, or was this really kind of put into fruition now that we had a lot of time to think about other stuff? Is that what you guys were trying to do here recently, is think, what's some other ideas?
Well, yeah, that's a really good question. We absolutely had been planning to launch this class, Brain Power. We weren't anticipating launching it until September. It took quite a bit of studying and learning. I didn't always know this much about neuroscience of the brain, and you really have to do your homework and understand it if you're going to apply it. So we've taken 6 months to get certified and learn about it, and we were going to take another 6 months to launch it. But because we've had this opportunity and all of this open schedule time, we have just forged ahead really quickly, and now we're really excited, just like you said. And I think this is the time where people can self-reflect and say, well, I didn't used to have time for exercise, or I always wanted to eat right, but it takes too much time. Stop and think now. Think about what positive outcome can I make of this? And that's kind of what we've done at work, and what I would encourage people to do, personally in their own life.
What I think is interesting when we talk about an active adult community like On Top of the World is its purpose is, like you said, that first part, being active, right? And yet sometimes, too, the routines that get set in motion just from their day-to-day, that the routines that they've come up with because they have what they think is more time because they're retired, kind of gets, what's the word, sedimentary or whatever. It gets kind of stuck because it is wake up, coffee, then go here to the store and then do this. My grandparents, I've noticed, become real routine right after they had gotten to the point of retirement. And then it was interesting because it's almost like subconsciously they changed the way they do things. For most people with this time, it's because they don't have to go to work, unfortunately, but they have more time because of that. Well, in the active adult community, it was just like a different way of dealing with their day-to-day anyway, which a lot of people assume is like, oh, when you don't have to work, you have time and you can restructure your schedule. Well, a lot of folks in the active adult community had a different way that their days went, but then still changed, and then still probably drummed up those conversations about what could I do to do better, to eat better, to think better, to exercise a little bit more and stuff, which again is kind of looking at the silver lining or the positive thing to come out of it, which is great. And I think that's where a lot of it is too, is when I think about folks my age with my family and some of my friends and colleagues, wow, it's been interesting to have so much more time. Because that's something we always struggle for. It's like, all right, I need to make more money, but then with that comes a sacrifice of time. And then when you have more time, it's like, wow, I just sacrificed some of the income to do that. But here it's been kind of a different way of saying, like, well, things may be struggling on the financial end, but it's not our fault. We're doing what we have to do at the time with the crisis, which gives us more time, which I think a lot of people have reflected more on their health in general just because of what the crisis is a pandemic. Mm-hmm. So they're thinking to themselves, all right, if I have to do something with my time, why not look at doing something better? I think we naturally start to think that way. And here you guys are actually putting something into use, actually giving people an opportunity to see something that they can do. I think that's great. Yeah. That's excellent.
And I think what Cammie's really doing is she's saying, hey, especially to our retirees and On Top of the World, go out and do something and show the way to your children, to your friends.
Yes.
Hey, I'm taking advantage of this opportunity this time.
And that sets the example to, again, kind of like I said, just have yourself look a little bit better coming through a crisis, and that moves things forward. Like you said, sets the example for the next generation, like you said, for their grandkids and such.
Yeah.
It's good. Well, with that, we're coming to the bottom of the 9 o'clock hour. So it was a pleasure to have you in here. It was nice to meet you, Cammie, and everything else. I think that is fascinating with that. That almost starts to make me think more about how when you guys have, because we had you in here a couple weeks ago talking about the charter school and everything,
right.
and we were talking about different ideas that come into the learning and stuff and the active mind of how to teach the new generations of young kids. That's right there. That's in the forefront in itself, which is all good things. So excellent. Well, thank you guys very, very much. We're gonna take our break here as we do, and we look forward to 2 weeks from now, partner.
I think so.
Excellent.
See you later.
Excellent. Well,
Thanks,
you guys be
Adam.
safe. We appreciate it. WOCA 96.3 FM, 1370 AM. WOCA Ocala. Stay tuned. When we come back, we'll have Marion County Sheriff Billy Woods in the studio. We'll be back right after this.